All right, welcome to another deep dive, everybody. Today, we're tackling something so many of us rely on daily, coffee and tea.
Oh,
And you guys sent in some seriously fascinating stuff, an article breaking down all their chemical secrets and the effects they have on us, plus like a whole compilation of research studies. We're going to sift through it all today, really get to the heart of what's going on with these beverages.
yeah, I think a lot of us kind of get stuck on those surface level headlines. But you want to know more, right? Like what's really behind these effects we feel? We've got this rich collection of information to go through, looking at these compounds, how they work in your body, specifically on your brain, heart, and gut, of course. And we'll get into what the research actually says about the long-term impacts, the risks, the potential benefits, all that good stuff. It's going to be like your own personalized tour through the science of coffee and tea.
I love that. Okay, so let's start by zooming in way in to the molecular level here. When we brew a cup, what are we actually dealing with? The article you shared lays out this awesome comparison of the active compounds in both coffee and tea.
Right off the bat, you notice the overlaps and the differences. Caffeine, obviously, that's a big one for both. But coffee's usually packing a much bigger punch? But then tea has this unique thing, L-theanine. That's really its signature, not found in coffee at all. Makes you think about how that one little difference shapes our experience, right?
Totally. And I always think of that L-theanine as being behind that focused, calm feeling people get with tea. Like it kind of smooths out the caffeine's edge. Then on the flip side, coffee brings the chlorogenic acids, not really appetite in tea. But in coffee, they're linked to being antioxidants and having a role in how we process glucose. So it's kind of like each drink has a totally different recipe, biochemically speaking.
Exactly. It is like two totally different recipes. And we can't forget about those polyphenols. Both coffee and tea have those. They're the antioxidants that everyone's talking about these days, right? For
Mm.
fighting inflammation, keeping our hearts and brains healthy. Then we have tannins, which are more concentrated in tea especially. They can be good for our gut, but our article mentions how they can also bind to iron, could affect how well our bodies absorb it. And finally, green tea. That's where the catechins really shine, especially this one called EGCG, links to boosting metabolism and even some promising anti-cancer research. So even before we feel anything, the chemistry's telling a different story for each one.
Okay, but this is where things get really, really interesting. How all of that chemistry actually plays out in our brains. We often turn to coffee for that instant energy boost. What's the science behind that?
So, coffee's caffeine works by blocking this neurotransmitter, adenosine. Basically, adenosine is like a signal to your brain that it's time to chill out, time to feel tired.
Yeah.
But caffeine swoops in and blocks that signal so your brain's activity ramps up. That's why you feel more alert. And the research shows some cool stuff too, like faster reaction times, better memory, you can focus better. And get this, there's evidence that regularly drinking coffee could actually lower your risk of those neurodegenerative diseases, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's. They think those antioxidants we talked about are protecting your brain cells. It makes you think about your morning coffee differently, huh?
Right. It's more than just waking you up. But tea, it gives you a totally different kind of mental boost, doesn't it? It's
Yeah.
not that jolt.
Yeah, it's more gradual. And that L-theanine is at work again. Research shows it partners with caffeine, like modulating its effects. So you get that focus, but without the jitters. Studies even show that combo increases alpha brainwaves, that relaxed but alert state. You're concentrated, but not anxious. And green and herbal teas, they're especially known for stress reduction. And just like coffee, those catechins and polyphenols in tea protect your brain from oxidative stress, which is a major contributor to cognitive decline. Pretty cool how different compounds lead to different mental states, right?
Yeah, so coffee's like that fast lane, and tea's more like a steady cruise control for your brain. But are there downsides? Are there things about either of them that are, bad for our brains?
Oh, for sure. It's not all sunshine and rainbows. With coffee, you've got the jitteriness, anxiety, even insomnia if you overdo it or drink it too late, and caffeine withdrawal, the headaches, the fogginess. Not fun. Tea is gentler, but it gives you less of an energy kick. Might not be enough if you're super tired. And those tannins could interfere with iron absorption, and over time, that could affect your brain, especially if you're already low on iron. The sources also talk about fluoride levels, mainly in cheaper black teas. It's still being researched, but something to be aware of.
Interesting stuff to think about. All right, let's shift gears to the heart, another area where I think we all want to know what our coffee and tea habit is doing.
When you're looking at the long-term effects on health, the heart is a big one, right? For coffee, some research suggests it can actually boost your metabolism and help you burn fat. And maybe surprisingly, moderate coffee drinking that's like 1 to 3 cups a day, according to the studies, it's linked to a lower risk of stroke and heart disease. Plus, that adrenaline boost you get can really help with exercise. Makes you think about that pre-workout cup, right?
Makes me feel better about mine, for sure. What about tea? How does that affect our heart?
Tea, especially the green kind, is really a standout here. The polyphenols in green tea can apparently help lower LDL cholesterol, that's the bad kind, and at the same time, it raises your HDL, the good cholesterol. Drinking tea regularly, again, green tea especially, is linked to lower blood pressure. And there's even evidence that it can help regulate your blood sugar, improving insulin sensitivity. Pretty important for preventing type 2 diabetes. Seems like tea is a friend to your heart overall.
Okay, so some really positive potential benefits there for both, but are there risks to our hearts we should be aware of?
Definitely things to consider. Coffee can sometimes temporarily raise blood pressure, particularly for people who are sensitive to caffeine. It could also potentially worsen some heart conditions, like arrhythmias, in people who are already predisposed to them. And a point to remember, unfiltered coffee, like from a French press, that can raise your LDL cholesterol because it keeps those oils that a paper filter would normally remove. Now with tea, black tea has oxalates. Those can be a problem for people who are prone to kidney stones, especially if they drink a ton of black tea. And green tea, even though it's mostly beneficial, it can thin your blood a little. So if you're on blood thinners already, you definitely want to talk to your doctor about how much green tea is safe for you.
Makes sense. It's all about knowing your own body. Okay, let's dive into something we don't always talk about, but is super important, our gut. How do coffee and tea affect our digestion and all those trillions of bacteria in our gut microbiome?
This is an area where we're learning so much. It's really exciting. The gut is so central to our overall health. We know coffee gets things moving in your digestive tract, so it can be good for, preventing constipation. But what's cool is some new research suggests it acts like a prebiotic, meaning it could actually help those beneficial bacteria in our gut to flourish. There was this really interesting study in Nature Microbiology that focused on how coffee helps Lactobacillus saccharolyticus, that's a good bacteria, changes how you think about your morning cup, right?
Whoa, that's amazing. I never thought of coffee that way. What about tea? Does it do anything similar?
Yep. Tea, especially those herbal kinds like peppermint, chamomile, ginger, musi, those have been used forever to soothe upset stomachs, bloating, nausea, all that. And just like coffee, green tea's polyphenols seem to have a positive effect on the mix of bacteria in our gut. So it looks like both coffee and tea have a more complex relationship with our gut than we realized.
But are there any, digestive downsides to either of them that we should know about?
Oh, yeah, for sure. That acidity in coffee can cause trouble for some people. Stomach irritation, heartburn, even ulcers if you're prone to them. And because it stimulates things, it can actually make IBS symptoms worse for some people. With tea, especially if you drink it on an empty stomach, it can cause a little nausea for some folks, probably those tannins again. And drinking tons of tea could maybe slow down your digestion because tannins might mess with some of your digestive enzymes. So yeah, it's a lot about figuring out what works best for your individual system.
Right. It's so personal. Okay, let's switch gears again and talk about hormones. Not something you always think about when it comes to coffee and tea.
This is where it gets really interesting. We've got the short-term effects and then the potential long-term stuff. Coffee can definitely give you a mood boost, makes you feel more motivated because it increases those feel-good neurotransmitters in your brain like dopamine and serotonin. But especially if you have it first thing in the morning before eating, it can also make your body release cortisol, that's the stress hormone. And there's research going on right now, although it's not conclusive yet, looking at whether drinking a lot of coffee might affect testosterone and estrogen levels over time. It's complicated.
How about tea's effects on hormones? Is it similar to coffee or totally different?
Tea, especially green tea, it's actually been shown to help with hormonal balance in some ways. Some studies suggest it can help regulate insulin sensitivity, which is great for your metabolism overall and could even help with hormonal acne. But there is one concern that's come up about black tea, which is the fluoride. Some black teas have quite a bit, and some research suggests that if you drink a ton of it over a long period, it could mess with your thyroid function, especially if you're sensitive to that. So again, moderation seems to be key.
Okay, let's move on to hydration and bone strength. Two totally different things, but both really important.
You're right, they are different. People often think coffee dehydrates you because it's a diuretic, but the research actually shows that if you drink moderate amounts, your body adapts to it, and you're not actually getting dehydrated. But drinking a lot of caffeine could maybe interfere with how well your body absorbs calcium, and that's important for your bones in the long run. Tea, on the other hand, especially the herbal and green kinds, is definitely hydrating and can actually give you some extra minerals. Black tea, we have to mention those oxalates again. Those could potentially lower calcium absorption too, and maybe increase the risk of kidney stones for people who are susceptible.
What does the research say about how coffee and tea affect our bones long term?
It's kind of a mixed bag here. Some studies have found a connection between drinking lots of coffee and a higher risk of bone fractures, especially for women.
Hmm.
For tea, it doesn't really seem to have a negative impact on bone fractures for most people, but scientists are still looking into this. Just goes to show how one drink can have different effects on different parts of our bodies.
We've covered so much. We've gone deep on the chemistry, the immediate effects, and now the long-term research. So what's the big picture? Is there a clear winner between coffee and tea?
Like the article said, it depends on your goals. If you need a quick energy boost, want to perform better during exercise, or maybe speed up your metabolism, coffee might be the way to go. But if you want that calm, focused feeling, you're really into heart health, or prefer a gentler, longer-lasting effect, then tea's probably more your style. The best choice is totally personal.
And what about how we drink them? Are there any tips to get the most benefit and minimize the risks?
Timing definitely matters. Drinking coffee earlier in the day is usually better so you don't mess up your sleep. Tea might be better in the afternoon or evening if you're trying to relax. Moderation is super important for both. Sticking to 3 or 4 cups of coffee a day can help you avoid the jitters and any potential heart problems. And for both coffee and tea, it's best to watch out for adding too much sugar and cream. Those can counteract some of the health benefits.
This has been so eye-opening. It's amazing how much there is to learn about coffee and tea. They both have so many potential benefits, but we also need to be aware of the risks. And as we've seen, a lot of that comes down to their unique chemistry and how much we're actually drinking.
Exactly. It's not one size fits all. The better choice is what works for you, your individual needs, your preferences, and if you have any health conditions to consider. What's amazing for one person might not be the best for someone else.
So to all our listeners out there, after learning all this, how are you thinking about your coffee and tea habits? Are you going to make any changes? Maybe try to focus on supporting your gut health or prioritize long-term disease prevention based on what we've learned. We really hope you'll keep exploring these topics. What stood out most to you today? Keep thinking about it.